The warning lights flashed across every screen in the Coalition Defense Center. Admiral Red stood from his command chair, his four eyes widening at the sensor readings. The massive ship that had just entered their system wasn't supposed to exist anymore. According to all their records, the humans and their warships had vanished from known space 200 years ago. "Report," he ordered, keeping his voice steady despite the rising tension in the room. The younger officers around him were already showing signs of stress, their scaled skin shifting colors in response to their anxiety. Officer Blue, the head of sensor operations, brought up the main display. Unknown vessel, approximately 3 kilometers in length. Energy readings are minimal, but the hull composition matches historical records of human warships. Specifically, sir, it appears to be the HSS Thunder. The name sent a wave of whispers through the command center. Even after 2 centuries, the stories of human warships were still used to frighten young Coalition recruits during their training. The Thunder, in particular, had been infamous for appearing out of nowhere, wreaking havoc on its enemies, and disappearing just as mysteriously. "Impossible," Admiral Red muttered, but the evidence was right in front of him. "Get me the council. Now." Within minutes, the holographic forms of the Coalition Council members flickered into existence around him. Representatives from 12 different species, each one a leader of their respective civilizations, all wearing expressions of concern, or their species equivalent. "Honorable Council," Admiral Red began, "approximately 20 minutes ago, our sensors detected a human warship entering the Proxima system. We believe it to be the HSS Thunder." The council chamber erupted in overlapping voices. The representative of the Crystal Collective, a beam of living crystal, chimed with alarm. The humans were supposed to be gone. Their exodus was complete. Clearly, the swarm mind representative buzzed. "We were mistaken." Admiral Red waited for the initial shock to pass before continuing. "The ship appears to be running on minimal power. Our initial scans show significant battle damage to its outer hull. However," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "I advise extreme caution. Humans were known for their deceptive tactics." The council members fell silent, processing this information. Their civilizations had advanced significantly in the 2 centuries since humanity's disappearance, but the stories of human military prowess still commanded respect. Their unpredictable strategies and seemingly illogical decisions had won them victories against technologically superior forces time and time again. "What are their weapons capabilities?" asked the Metal Union representative, their voice resonating through mechanical speakers. Officer Blue stepped forward, projecting a detailed scan of the Thunder. Based on historical records, this class of human warship carried enough firepower to level a small continent. However, current energy readings suggest most systems are dormant. We're detecting no active weapon signatures. "That means nothing," Admiral Red interjected. "Humans were masters of energy masking. They could hide entire fleets until the moment they struck." The council members shifted uncomfortably. They had built their coalition on principles of order, predictability, and overwhelming technological superiority. Humans, with their chaos-embracing tactics and their tendency to win battles they should have lost, represented everything that unnerved them. "Admiral," the council head spoke at last, "you have authorization to take whatever measures you deem necessary to protect this system. But remember, if there are humans aboard that ship, they might be the first we've encountered in 2 centuries. Any interaction could have far-reaching diplomatic implications." Admiral Red acknowledged the order with a slight bow. As the council members' holograms faded, he turned back to his crew. "Alert all defense platforms. I want every weapon in this system tracking that ship, but do not, under any circumstances, lock onto it. Humans had an uncanny ability to detect weapon locks, and I don't want to provoke them." As his crew rushed to comply with his orders, Admiral Red studied the image of the Thunder. Its scared hull and dormant systems might suggest a dead or dying vessel, but he knew better than to trust appearances. After all, the most famous quote from the human military archives had become something of a mantra in coalition training. When hunting humans, remember, if they appear weak, they are strong. If they appear strong, they are stronger. And if they appear to be dead, check twice, then check again. The coalition observation ships moved slowly through space, their sensors focused on the massive human warship. The Thunder hung motionless against the backdrop of stars, its battle-scarred hull telling stories of ancient conflicts. Admiral Red watched from his command center as the first detailed scans came in. "Sir, we're detecting no life signs," Officer Blue reported, his scales shifting to a pale green of confusion. "The ship's reactor is running at less than 5% power. Most systems appear to be offline or in some kind of standby mode." Admiral Red moved closer to the main display, studying the ship's damaged exterior. Deep gashes ran along its armor plating, and several weapon ports looked fused shut from intense heat. "Show me the engine section," he ordered. The display zoomed in on the Thunder's massive engines. They were unlike anything currently used by coalition ships. Bigger, cruder, but somehow more powerful. Even after 2 centuries, coalition engineers had failed to fully understand how human ships could move so quickly through normal space. "Look at these impact marks." Admiral Red pointed to a pattern of holes near the engine housing. Whatever they were fighting, it used some kind of projectile weapon. Primitive, but effective. Officer Green, the youngest member of the command crew, spoke up. "Sir, shouldn't we try to contact them? Maybe they need help." The Admiral turned all 4 eyes toward the young officer. "You weren't here during the emergency response training, were you?" When Green shook his head, Red continued. "The last recorded instance of a coalition force attempting to help a seemingly disabled human vessel ended with 3 rescue ships being captured. The humans had turned their life support systems into makeshift weapons. They used their own frozen atmosphere as projectiles." The command center fell silent as the crew processed this information. The display continued showing new scan data, revealing more details about the mysterious ship. Its hull was made of materials that partially blocked their best scanning equipment, leaving many questions unanswered. "Sir," Officer Blue called out suddenly, "we're detecting power fluctuations. The ship's defense grid just cycled." Admiral Red straightened up. "Did we trigger something? Were any of our scans too invasive?" "Negative, sir. It appears to be an automated response. Their point defense turrets are rotating, but weapon systems remain unpowered." The Admiral watched as small gun turrets across the Thunder's hull moved in perfect synchronization, tracking invisible targets. Even damaged and dormant, the human ship maintained its defensive readiness. It reminded him of ancient Earth creatures called sharks, predators that never truly slept. "Launch a probe," he ordered after several minutes of consideration. "Minimal power signature, no active scanning. I want a closer look at their bridge section." The probe, barely larger than a personal transport pod, drifted slowly toward the Thunder. As it approached, the huge ship's automated defenses seemed to ignore it completely. Either the systems weren't functioning properly, or they had already classified the tiny probe as non-threatening. The probe's camera feed showed them their first clear view of the bridge. The reinforced windows were intact but covered in a layer of frost from the inside. The bridge itself was dark, but occasional flashes of light from still-functioning displays created eerie shadows. "Temperature reading inside the bridge is -100 degrees," Officer Blue reported. "The entire ship appears to be frozen solid. But," he paused, double-checking his readings, "there's something strange about the power distribution. Small amounts of energy are being directed to specific sections of the ship. It's almost like it's preserving something." Admiral Red finished the thought. Or someone. He remembered the stories about human survival techniques, about how they could endure extreme conditions that would kill most species. "Expand our scan range. I want to know if there are any other ships out there, anywhere in the system." Because if there was one thing the historical records made clear, it was that humans never did anything without a reason. And a human warship, even a seemingly dead one, never traveled alone. Commander Stone led his boarding team through the airlock of the HSS Thunder. Their magnetic boots clicked against the metal floor of the entry chamber, a sound echoing through the frozen air. Despite wearing the Coalition's most advanced environmental suits, they all felt the bitter cold seeping in. Temperature holding at -100 degrees, reported Tech Officer Gray, checking his instruments. Air pressure almost non-existent. Whatever happened here, they vented most of their atmosphere deliberately. The boarding team's lights cut through the darkness, revealing corridors that seemed to go on forever. The Thunder was enormous compared to Coalition ships, built on a scale that spoke of humanity's ambition. Frost patterns covered every surface, creating strange shapes that reminded Stone of ancient tribal art. Life support is still functioning in some sections, Gray said, studying his scanner. But it's running on minimal power, just enough to maintain these temperatures. It's like the ship is hibernating. They moved deeper into the vessel, passing through chambers filled with machinery they didn't understand. Coalition engineers had spent centuries trying to replicate human technology, but some aspects of it remained mysteries. Even now, Stone could see design choices that made no sense to him, until he remembered that humans often built things to serve multiple purposes. Movement detected, one of the team members suddenly reported. Everyone froze, weapons ready. In the beam of their lights, a small maintenance robot rolled past, ignoring them completely. It stopped at a wall panel, extended a tool arm, made an adjustment, then continued on its way. The automated systems are still running, Stone observed. Stay alert. If the basic systems are active, the defense systems might be too. They reached a major intersection where the corridor split into 3 branches. Their scanner showed increased power usage down the central path. Stone made the decision to follow the power readings, remembering his briefing about human ship layouts. The most important systems were usually kept in the center of their vessels, protected by layers of armor and redundant systems. The next chamber they entered stopped them in their tracks. It was massive, stretching up several decks, and filled with rows of cylindrical pods, each covered in a layer of frost. Gray moved to the nearest pod and wiped away some of the ice with his gloved hand. Through the cleared patch, they could see a human face, perfectly preserved. Cryogenic suspension. Stone breathed, understanding dawning. The whole crew is here. They're not dead. They're sleeping. Gray accessed a nearby control panel, his translation software decoding the human text. According to this, there are 423 crew members in suspension. Life signs are stable. He paused, checking another reading. Sir, these pods have been active for 187 years. Stone touched one of the pods, feeling the subtle vibration of its systems through his glove. The Coalition had tried to develop cryogenic technology for decades without success. Yet here were hundreds of humans, preserved perfectly through nearly 2 centuries of frozen sleep. Check their ship logs, Stone ordered. I want to know why they went into suspension, and what they were running from. Gray worked on the computer terminal while the rest of the team secured the chamber. After several minutes he spoke, his voice shaking slightly. Sir, I found something. The last log entry. You need to see this. The screen lit up with human text, translated into Coalition standard. As Stone read, he felt his blood run cold, and it had nothing to do with the freezing temperature. The log entry was brief, but terrifying. Final status report. Swarm pursuit continues. Conventional weapons ineffective. Modified quantum torpedoes showing promise but require more testing. Crew entering emergency suspension until arrival at fallback point. Warning to any who find this vessel. Do not wake us unless absolutely necessary. If you're reading this, they're probably right behind us. The medical bay of the Thunder hummed with power as Coalition medical officers worked to revive the first human from cryosleep. They had chosen to wake the ship's captain first, following the chain of command found in the ship's records. Admiral Red watched through a protective barrier as the cryopod slowly warmed up. "Life signs are strengthening," reported Medical Officer White, monitoring the vital signs. "Their biology is remarkable. The cellular damage we expected from long-term cryo-sleep isn't there." They knew exactly what they were doing when they designed these systems. The pod's frost coating melted away, revealing Captain Walker more clearly. The human looked small compared to most coalition species, but there was something about their peaceful expression that made Admiral Red uneasy. He had read too many reports about humanity's capabilities to underestimate them, regardless of size. The pod's cover slid open with a soft hiss. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Captain Walker's eyes snapped open, alert, and focused instantly. Before anyone could react, the human was sitting up, taking in every detail of the room, and everyone in it. "Coalition species," Walker said, voice rough from long disuse but steady. "How long?" Admiral Red stepped forward. 187 years, Captain Walker. "You are in the Proxima system. I am Admiral Red of the Coalition Defense Force." Walker nodded, processing this information with remarkable calm for someone who had just learned they'd been asleep for nearly 2 centuries. "The swarm. Have you encountered them yet?" "We found your ship's warning," Admiral Red replied. "But we don't fully understand what we're dealing with. What is this swarm?" Walker swung their legs off the medical bed, waving away the offered assistance. "They're the reason humanity scattered across the stars. The reason we disappeared. We didn't run away. We split up to divide their attention, to buy time to find a way to stop them." The medical bay fell silent as Walker stood up, stretching muscles that hadn't been used in almost 2 centuries. "The swarm is exactly what it sounds like. Self-replicating machines that consume everything in their path to make more of themselves. They adapt to any weapon used against them. Conventional attacks just give them more material to work with." Admiral Red felt his scales ripple with unease. "If they're that dangerous, why did your ship stop here? Why not continue running?" Walker's expression hardened. "The Thunder never runs. We led them away from populated systems. Yes, but we were also studying them, testing new weapons, learning their patterns. The last batch of quantum torpedoes showed promise. They disrupt the swarm's ability to communicate and replicate, but we needed more time to perfect the technology." "And now?" Admiral Red asked, noting how the human captain was already moving around the room with increasing steadiness, examining equipment and layouts. "Now we need to wake my crew and prepare for battle." Walker turned to face the Admiral directly. "The swarm doesn't give up a trail. If you found us, they won't be far behind. Your weapons won't work against them. They had centuries to adapt to energy-based technology. But we have something they've never seen before." A warning alarm suddenly blared through the ship. Officer Blue's voice came over the comm system. "Admiral, long-range sensors are detecting multiple objects entering the system. Their configuration matches nothing in our database." Walker's expression didn't change, but their posture shifted subtly, becoming more alert, more predatory. "How long until they reach our position?" 4 hours at current speed, Blue reported. "Wake my crew," Walker ordered, speaking with an authority that made even Admiral Red straighten up. "All of them. And I need access to the Thunder's control systems. We're about to show you why humanity earned its reputation." They paused, then added, "and why we're still worth saving." The Thunder's bridge came alive with activity as the awakened human crew took their stations. Captain Walker stood at the command center, studying the tactical displays showing the approaching swarm. The Coalition officers watched in amazement as the supposedly damaged ship systems powered up one by one, revealing capabilities far beyond what their scans had detected. "The swarm has evolved since our last encounter," Walker said, pointing to the sensor readings. "Their formation is different, more organized. They've learned." The captain turned to Admiral Red, who had remained on the bridge as a liaison. "Your fleet's energy weapons won't be effective. The swarm absorbs energy and uses it to power their replication process. We learned that lesson the hard way. Admiral Red watched as more sections of the Thunder powered up. The ship's massive engines began to hum, sending vibrations through the deck plates. "What do you suggest?" "You mentioned quantum torpedoes." Walker nodded, bringing up a holographic display of the weapon system. "We developed them during our running battles. They don't try to destroy the swarm units. They disrupt the quantum field they use to communicate and coordinate. Turn each unit back into just a machine, unable to act as part of the greater whole." Around them, the human crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements suggesting years of combat experience despite their long sleep. Engineering teams rushed to bring the ship's special weapons online, while tactical officers updated their targeting systems with new swarm movement patterns. 3 hours until contact. Officer Blue announced from his temporary station on the Thunder's bridge. His scales had shifted to a deep blue of concern as he studied the approaching enemy. "The swarm vessels are accelerating. They've detected us." Walker pressed a series of commands into the tactical console. The Thunder's hull began to shift, panels moving to reveal hidden weapon ports and sensor arrays. "Admiral, I need your fleet to form a defensive line behind us. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. Let them focus on us. They'll recognize this ship. We've destroyed enough of them to earn their attention." The massive view screens showed the Coalition fleet moving into position. Their ships were sleeker, more advanced-looking than the Thunder, but somehow less intimidating. The human vessel, with its battle scars and crude but powerful design, looked like what it was, a weapon built for war. "Sir," one of the human crew called out, "quantum torpedo systems are online. We have 18 shots ready, 12 more being prepared. Power distribution is stable." Walker acknowledged the report, then turned back to Admiral Red. "There's something you need to understand about how we fight. Coalition tactics focus on overwhelming force, on having the most advanced technology. Humans." The captain paused, checking another tactical display. "We focus on making the enemy's advantages work against them." The tactical officer spoke up again. "Captain, the swarm is transmitting. It's different from before, more complex." "They remember us," Walker said quietly. "Good. That means they'll make the same mistake they always make. They'll think they've adapted to everything we can throw at them." The captain's lips curved into a slight smile. "Show them the new torpedo design." The main screen displayed the weapon schematics. Admiral Red studied them, his 4 eyes widening as he understood what he was seeing. The humans hadn't just improved their original design. They'd completely rebuilt it, using principles that the Coalition's best scientists hadn't even theorized yet. 2 hours to contact, Officer Blue reported. "The swarm is moving to surround us." "Perfect," Walker said, and there was something in the human's tone that made even the swarm's approach seem less terrifying. "Let them think they have us trapped. After all, that's exactly where we need them to be." The crew of the Thunder worked with incredible speed to prepare their ship for battle. Their movement seemed almost like a well-practiced dance, each person knowing exactly what needed to be done. Admiral Red watched as humans half the size of his smallest crew members lifted heavy equipment and rewired complex systems with practiced ease. In the engine room, human engineers modified power conduits in ways that made Coalition technical advisors nervous. They redirected energy flows through pathways that shouldn't have worked, yet somehow did. When one Coalition engineer pointed out that their modifications went against every known rule of power management, the human chief engineer just smiled and said, "That's why they'll work." Captain Walker moved through the ship, checking on each team's progress. The captain stopped at a weapons station where crews were loading the quantum torpedoes. These weapons looked different from the ones in the historical records. They were smaller, but something about them made the air itself feel strange when you got too close. "The swarm thinks it knows all our tricks," Walker explained to Admiral Red as they walked. "They've had nearly 2 centuries to analyze their encounters with us, but they don't understand how humans think. They can't predict what they don't understand." The Admiral watched as human crew members installed strange devices along the ship's hull. "What are those?" he asked, pointing to the machinery. "Gravity manipulators," Walker answered. "But we've modified them. Instead of just protecting us from gravitational forces, they can create localized gravity wells. The swarm units communicate through quantum links. By disturbing the space between them, we can break those links." On the bridge, tactical officers ran combat simulations. The main screen showed previous battles with the swarm, each replay highlighting different attack patterns. The humans had spent their years of running not just fleeing, but studying their enemy, learning its weaknesses. 1 hour to contact, Officer Blue announced. His scales had shifted to a deep purple of mixed fear and anticipation. The tactical display showed the swarm spreading out, forming a giant net in space. Their ships, if they could be called that, moved with perfect coordination. Walker stood at the command station, reviewing final preparations. "What you're about to see," the captain told Admiral Red, "is why humans have a reputation for being unpredictable. Your people think we're reckless, that we take unnecessary risks. But there's always a method to our madness." The human crew had finished their modifications with minutes to spare. The Thunder's engines pulsed with power that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Its weapons, a mix of conventional firearms and experimental quantum devices, hummed with energy that made coalition sensors give impossible readings. 30 minutes, Officer Blue called out. The swarm had finished forming their net, closing off all apparent escape routes. Their ships moved in perfect geometric patterns, each one linked to all the others through their quantum network. Walker looked at the tactical display with an expression that Admiral Red couldn't quite read. Was it anticipation? Satisfaction? The captain touched a control panel, and suddenly the Thunder's true power signature blazed to life. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up, every system coming online at full capacity. "You said humans are unpredictable," Admiral Red observed, watching the power readings climb far beyond what should have been possible. "What exactly are you planning?" Walker's reply was calm, but there was an edge of steel in it. "We're going to show the swarm why letting us sleep for 2 centuries was their biggest mistake. They gave us time to dream up new ways to fight them. And humans," the captain paused as the ship's modified weapons powered up, "humans have very creative dreams." The swarm struck first, just as Captain Walker predicted. Thousands of machine ships swarmed toward the Thunder like angry insects, their metallic bodies gleaming in the starlight. The Coalition fleet held position behind the human warship, watching as the Thunder faced the enemy alone. Walker stood calmly at the command station, watching the approaching wave of destruction. "All hands, execute Protocol Omega," the captain ordered. The human crew responded instantly, their hands flying over control panels. The Thunder's modified systems hummed to life, creating harmonics that made Coalition sensors scramble. "Now they'll see why we let them think we were damaged," Walker said quietly. The Thunder's hull began to glow with strange energy. The gravity manipulators activated, creating invisible webs of distorted space around the ship. The swarm's perfect formation began to waver as their quantum links encountered these distortions. The first wave of swarm ships crashed against the Thunder's defenses, but instead of the expected explosion of energy weapons, the human ship responded with its modified quantum torpedoes. Each torpedo detonated in a sphere of twisted spacetime, sending ripples through the swarm's network. Where the ripples passed, swarm ships lost their coordination, bumping into each other like confused insects. "Target their command nodes," Walker ordered. The Thunder's conventional weapons opened up, but they weren't firing at the swarm ships directly. Instead, they were shooting into seemingly empty space, creating patterns of explosions that herded the confused machines into tight clusters. Admiral Red watched in amazement as the human strategy became clear. They weren't trying to destroy the swarm. They were breaking its ability to think as one entity. Each quantum torpedo disrupted more of the network, Each carefully placed explosion forced the machines into positions where they interfered with each other's remaining communications. The swarm tried to adapt, changing its attack patterns. But the humans had anticipated this. The Thunder's gravity manipulators shifted, creating new patterns of distortion. Walker smiled as the enemy fell into their trap. They'd always try to adapt to what hurt them last. They never expect us to have multiple strategies ready. The battle reached its peak as the Thunder launched its final wave of quantum torpedoes. The weapons detonated in a complex pattern, their effects combining and multiplying. The space around the swarm ships twisted and writhed as quantum fields collapsed. Individual machines spun out of control, their perfect coordination shattered. "Now," Walker commanded. The Thunder's main guns opened up, targeting the confused and isolated swarm units. Without their network, without their ability to adapt and coordinate, they were just machines. Advanced and dangerous, but no longer the unstoppable force they had been. The Coalition fleet watched as the Thunder methodically destroyed the scattered swarm units. The human ship moved with unexpected grace for its size, its modified systems performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. Every shot was precise, every movement calculated to maintain the disruption of the swarm's network. When the last swarm ship exploded, silence fell over the command bridge. The Thunder's crew continued their work calmly, running scans to ensure no enemy units remained. Admiral Red looked at Captain Walker with new understanding. "You didn't just spend those 2 centuries sleeping," he said. "You were planning this all along. The damaged appearance, the minimal power readings." Walker nodded. "Humans learned long ago that the best way to win a fight is to let your enemy think they know all your capabilities. The swarm spent 2 centuries analyzing their encounters with us, developing countermeasures for everything they'd seen us do." The captain gestured to the debris field that had once been the swarm. "But they never considered that we might spend our time in cryo-sleep dreaming up entirely new ways to fight."